I don't even know what she was talking about, but I know that Jamie, she called me kind of probably as just like a basic check, but then she's like, I've got this.
Yeah.
That's number one. Now, number two, I used to give this example of decentralized command, extreme ownership I try to think of the most extreme example of where I'm the CEO of a manufacturing company and there's 1,000 people that work in each one of my 10 factories. So we've got 10,000 people. And one of those people has a job where they're in a room by themselves. And their job is to take part A and put it on top of part B. And that's it. Take part A, put it on top of part B, and let it go. And if that person screws that up and doesn't do it right, how can that be my fault, right? How can that possibly be my fault? And it's really easy to fall in the trap of, well, actually, Jocko, I mean, if you got 10 factories, they have 1,000 people each. This is one person that's literally the front line. This is a minimum wage individual. How can that possibly be your fault? And that's the reasoning behind that is that's pretty good logic. Look, there's 10,000 people. In 10 factories, there's one guy in one room. He's the lowest paid guy, and he screws up this job. How can that possibly be my fault? You know what? That can't be my fault. Fire the guy, move on. That's one thing. And I can fire the guy and move on, right? Here's the problem with that. What did I change? What did I change? I didn't change anything. So if I take extreme ownership of that and say, hey, listen, here's what's going on. I didn't get the guy trained as well as I should have. I didn't explain it's not in the system. It's not in the training. I haven't set up proper training. I don't have the manager explaining why it's important for A to go on top of B. I haven't given the training. I haven't screened my people properly because maybe this guy just isn't capable. Maybe he doesn't have the cognitive capacity to do that function. That's also my fault. So all these things are things that I will change. And that's going to make us move in the right direction. And look, am I going to ever get to a point where no one's going to make a mistake in that room on those? No, I'm not. But I'm going to mitigate it as much as possible every single time. And that's infinitely better than saying, no, it's not my fault. That's a frontline guy. Fire him and move on. No. Take ownership of it. How can we prevent this from happening? So that was kind of my example of how I could really isolate someone that's just totally detached. I was talking to a company the other day, and I was like, I think this one might be even better. If one of my SEALs at my training command, where I've got 150 SEALs, one of my SEALs gets drunk out in town and gets into a fight and gets arrested, how can that possibly be my fault? And maybe it's easier to understand. Of course. What have I done wrong? I haven't explained why it's important not to get in trouble. I haven't explained the behavior. I haven't explained how it negatively impacts the team. I haven't explained how it negatively impacts the training that you're supposed to be teaching. I haven't explained to him how important it is for his family and how this is going to get him busted and how it's going to get him to lose pay. And I haven't explained that your negative impact to the teams impacts America, by the way. And so, look, am I going to prevent every person from, every guy on my command from ever? No, but I'm at least going to make efforts to prevent that from happening. And what's the best way to do that? The best way to do that is through culture. The best way to do that is through culture, is by saying, listen, our mission here is to get these guys trained up so they can go and be prepared to go overseas, do their mission, and bring all the guys home as much as humanly possible. That's what our mission is. Everything else doesn't even come close. That's what we do. That's what we do every single day. We save our friends' lives every day by giving them the best training. You got to get that culture. So that's on me. That's on me as a leader. And I got to look at the culture. I got to take a step back and say, what is the culture? And am I going to be able to change it overnight? No, I'm not. Is any leader going to be able to change it overnight? No, we're not. But do you need to start shifting in the right direction? Yes, you do. And by the way, who's in charge of culture at an organization? Every single person that's there. If you're in an organization, you are the culture. The way you act impacts the culture. The way you think impacts the culture. The way you behave impacts the culture. And that should be empowering. That should make you feel good. That, look, my boss acts like an idiot. Doesn't matter. Our culture doesn't. I'm not going to act like an idiot.
What you tolerate impacts the culture. You're telling that story. I'm just thinking about why Marines don't wear flip-flops on base.
Yep.
And what you tolerate impacts the culture. I mean, that whole story, I mean, Echo, what was, and I'm embarrassed, I'm losing the word. We're talking about last time, when you eat a donut, you convince yourself it's okay. It's not justification. What's the word that you tell yourself?
Negotiation?
No, when you
rationalize.
Yeah, the rationalization. And they talked about it last time. It's like how those are all lies you tell yourself. You rationalize it, you justify it as, hey, there are 10,000 people in this company. Come on, man. I'm one guy. What do you really expect from me? I'm supposed to now manage the junior guy at the farthest away plant on a different time zone. It's just, and that scenario, we get asked that question, some form of that question all the time, and there's a rationalization of I can't actually do that. And when you rationalize that or convince yourself of that, what happens is nothing changes.
Nothing changes.
And how easy it is to go, well, look at this scenario. Dude, it's not 4 people in the same room. That's my overseas plant with a different country and a different, cool. Mm-hmm. You can rationalize your way out of it, and guess what's going to happen? A is not going to go on top of B, and that product isn't going to work.
There was a little guideline that I kind of implemented, obviously on a very low level, but when you would talk about extreme, a long time ago, when you talk about extreme ownership and those kinds of scenarios where it's like on the surface, it's real obvious that's not your responsibility, seemingly, right?
Right. Okay.
There's
Just making sure
like
we're
that.
saying seemingly
Yes,
to make
sir.
sure okay, cool.
Yeah. So basically the little guidelines would be like, okay, don't look at it like whose fault it is or isn't. Just consider that automatically it's your, so let's say you weren't even part of the whole situation. You were just some outside consultant, whatever. Let's say you were tasked with, hey, from an external perspective, what moves can you make to be sure that never happens again? So instead of because, when you say extreme ownership, I'm going to take the blame. That blame kind of indicates that you should get in trouble kind of a thing, which can kind of trigger some people, I think.
It makes people scared.
Yeah.
It makes people scared, but you shouldn't be scared because who do I want working for me? Dave that comes in and says, hey, project failed because the contractors didn't do their job, or Echoes that says, hey, project failed because I didn't do a good job managing the contractors to make sure they held the line.
Yeah, fully. So like I said, an easier way to get to the point where you can understand, okay, this is on me, is to kind of use that guideline.
Oh, so
pretend in your head
okay.
kind of thing. What if you're tasked with making sure it never happened again? And that's when all those little things that you would always say start to make so much more sense, where it's like, oh yeah, because there is a scenario where that guy who's trying to put A on top of B, where he straight up just doesn't like you. He doesn't like this company. He doesn't even want the job. His grandma told him to get a job. All this stuff, right?
Right.
And he should not be there.
Yes,
right?
and whose fault is that he's there?
Exactly. But again, let's not look at it whose fault it is. I'm saying as far as my little guideline scenario.
So no, this isn't a guideline. What this is a nice little crutch.
Crutch.
It's a nice little crutch to use that kind of helps you. That kind of helps you move towards this direction. So
it helps you understand.
If your ego has a hard time saying this was my fault, if you need the crutch of okay, I'm gonna look at this and just see what I can do to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
If you need that crutch, go for it. And maybe Echo Charles is going to write a book called How to Sort of Take Ownership of Some Stuff Without Feeling Bad About It.
Okay. The last part was acceptable, but here's the thing. Oh, okay, Dave. Yeah, you like that one.
I was just picturing the title,
No,
The Crutch. How Echo sort of leads and wins.
Anyway, I'm just saying that will help solve the problem of these scenarios where it's like, how could I possibly be responsible for XYZ? That to me made it a lot more clear, way more automatically.
Yeah. Made it easier for you to digest. A little bit of sugar with the medicine. It's okay. Next section, how rivals view the competitive environment. Rivals operating from within different systems often perceive that they are under threat, especially competitors with authoritarian governments. Regime survival is usually the top priority in these states. Yeah, look at North Korea, how it's all just we are about to be attacked. These rivals also look for opportunities to reduce perceived threats while also working to expand their competitive options. Our rivals constantly study the elements of U.S. national power in an effort to exploit, to either to offset U.S. advantages or to find seams to exploit. For example, the Soviet Union during the Cold War developed an elaborate system to measure the correlation of forces between the United States and the USSR, which was further broken down into correlation of economic forces, the correlation of military forces, etc. The thought process heavily influences Russia today as they continue to deeply study the United States. Sun Tzu's famous statement, "Know your enemy and know yourself," highlights a perhaps even deeper cultural imperative for China to study the United States and the West. Damn, that's true. Finally, some rivals have a different outlook about the legitimacy of using aggressive action, like offensive cyber operations, interference in another state's internal politics, disinformation, etc. You can tell this is a recently written document to change the status quo in international relations. Their actions show they do not feel bound by standing international agreements and norms unless they can use those agreements to their advantage. Instead, their behavior shows they recognize resource constraints or hard power deterrents as the only kind of limits they might respect. This is when you're playing by different rules, basically. This is when two countries are playing by two different rules. And there's just violations. I know that's one of your favorite words, Echo Charles. Yeah. Violations. People do violations that they can kind of know that they can get away with.
Sure. Yeah.
And we are sitting here like, well, you're not allowed to do that. And they're like, oh, what do you think we're doing? It's almost one of those. Well, what do you think I'm doing? Of course I'm going to heel hook you. We're wearing gi. Oh, well, we're grappling, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Differing approach to competition campaigning. This is the next section. All the above leads to a permanent struggle mindset. Mm-hmm. It's a good way to go through life with a permanent struggle mindset. This is like enduring competition is what we're calling it. Hey, we're always competing. They're calling it permanent struggle.
Do you think the word struggle has a what do you call it? like a flavor of like you're losing? Does it kind of imply that you're kind of losing?
I think I get what you're saying.
Behind
I think I get what you're saying. Yeah, it gives you the impression that we're the underdog.
Yeah,
we are struggling, right?
Yeah.
If you were to say if you say I'm struggling, that doesn't mean I'm winning.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. That's like a different scenario. Yeah, struggling. So yes. So when you end up with a permanent struggle mindset, we are behind. And it continues on. There is no at peace condition, even when they choose to cooperate in a particular area. So even when we're good, we'll do this trade deal. Cool. There's still a struggle going on behind the scenes. It becomes a question of when and how they will compete, not if they will be competing. With this as the mindset, the tools used to create competitive advantages are limited only by human creativity and available resources. These rivals might take an action primarily to advance their economy, but they also will attempt to leverage that action to gain an advantage. This mindset causes them to try and exploit at any chance they see emerging. When they believe their competitors are distracted by other world events, they will seize on any opportunity this presents. Distracted by other events. It's so obvious how this stuff plays out every single day in the news. The following are common characteristics of our rivals' approach to competition. And there's a bunch of bullet points. Strong central command and control. Clear strategic goals. People talk about China and just these. They're playing this massively long strategic game. They're playing the way long game. They don't care. They're looking at their people like, oh yeah, kind of like, oh, it's a whatever. Mm-hmm. Look, we got some people that are working as slaves, or the human rights are horrible, or we got to eliminate this group. No factor. We're playing a long strategic game here. We got a game to win. Clear strategic goals. Powerful narratives. Hello, propaganda. Weaponizing benign activities. And they actually gave a big example of what that was all about. It's like weaponizing like tourists and cutting off tourists from going to certain areas. Recruitment of ethnic diasporas.